I cheated on my husband. Now he won't let me touch him at all. You know, there are moments in life that just shatter everything you thought you knew. Moments that make you question every single choice you've ever made, leaving a trail of wreckage that devastatingly impacts not just you, but the innocent people you swore to protect. For me, that moment came when my deepest, most primal desires completely torpedoed the beautiful, fulfilling life I'd meticulously built. Let me be brutally honest with you. I'm not the victim here. Not by a long shot. The real victims are my incredible husband, my two amazing boys, and even my parents, all of whom are now living with the crushing burden of my past sins. And believe me, I am truly, deeply sorry. 19 months ago, my entire world imploded. I was caught having an affair with a married neighbor, a father of three. I'm 32, my husband Jim is 39, and the neighbor, who I'll call Steve, was 27 at the time. The affair itself had started a little over 2 years ago and lasted about 5 months before we got caught. And yes, I know what you're thinking, but I swear on everything, we were only physical 4 times. Call me naive, call me a liar, but it's the truth. I know the first question on everyone's mind is probably, was your marriage on the rocks? Were you unhappy? Did you even love your husband? And to all of those, the answer is a resounding, unequivocal no. I was completely happy, truly fulfilled with Jim, and I loved him and our boys. They're 9 and 11 now, more than anything in this world. Jim satisfied me emotionally, mentally, physically. He was everything I had ever dreamed of. So how did I end up here? My misplaced attraction to Steve came from a deep, primal place. It was a feral attraction, one that yanked me straight back to my very first romantic encounter when I was 18. Back then, I was a high school girl, dated a few guys, but it was all innocent. Quick kisses, nothing serious. I saw them as friends. Then, I went to a friend's barbecue and met Charles. He was her cousin, 20 years old, and from the moment our eyes met, I was utterly captivated. It was like a magnet to steel, an instant, undeniable pull. We talked for hours at that barbecue, exchanged numbers, and the very next day, we met for ice cream. We walked, we talked, completely immersed in each other, and then, spontaneously, we just started kissing. He invited me back to his apartment, and that night, I had my first experience. It was magical, better than anything I could have ever imagined. To this day, I can't fully explain it. Something about Charles just ignited me, made me want to give him every part of myself. It was subconscious, irresistible. The strange thing is, beyond the physical, we had absolutely nothing in common. We were actually quite incompatible. After 11 intense months, the passion wore off, and I broke it off. A year later, I met Jim. And listen closely, because this is important. Sparks didn't exactly fly with Jim in the beginning, not like they did with Charles. But over time, I developed a deep, profound love for him, a love that was beyond anything I had ever felt before. Jim checked all my boxes, every single one, and I knew he was the one I wanted to build a life with. We married a year later, and for 13 joyous years, our marriage was a dream. Until I shattered it. We were blessed with 2 wonderful boys, spitting images of their dad, with his incredible personality. So, why am I telling you all this? Because it's crucial to understanding why I started the affair with Steve. Steve and his wife, Marcia, moved into our neighborhood. They were the youngest couple, quickly welcomed by everyone. Jim and I were the second youngest. At a neighborhood picnic, Steve and I locked eyes. And just like that, it was the exact same vibe, the same electrifying jolt I felt when I first saw Charles all those years ago. That raw, undeniable chemistry was back. The next time I saw him, it was at the car dealership where he worked in finance. We were looking for a new SUV, and at the picnic, Jim had mentioned Steve worked there. So we went. Steve made sure we got a great deal, great financing. And throughout the entire closing process, Steve and I kept making eye contact. Jim didn't notice. Isn't that just terrible? A few days later, I had to bring the car back for mud flaps. And that's when Steve and I had our first inappropriate meeting. He saw me in the lounge, came out to greet me, and asked me to come back to his office to discuss some additional financing information. We sat down, he got us coffee, and we started chatting. Just like with Charles, he blurted it out. He wanted to talk to me alone, to discuss how he was feeling. He said he felt this vibe, that he'd seen me glaring at him. I told him I felt something too, but that it was wrong. He said he knew it was wrong, but didn't care. He wanted me. Fast forward to the very next morning. We had our first intimate engagement at his house after our kids went to school and our spouses left for work. Jim, by the way, has a great job, and Marcia was an LPN. As I said, Steve and I were only physical 4 times during that 5-month period. There was absolutely no love connection between us. I loved Jim, and Steve loved Marcia. What we had was purely physical. And honestly, the physical part wasn't even as good as what I had with Jim. Not even close. But it was forbidden. And that made it thrilling, dangerous. Looking back, I think being a stay-at-home mom for 11 years had made me desperate for attention from this attractive, younger man. I just thought I could have this secret adventure, a little escape, and still maintain my loving, fulfilling marriage with Jim. I was the ultimate cake eater. And that fantasy came to a screeching, abrupt halt one Thursday morning, 19 months ago. Steve and I were caught in bed at his house by Marcia's mother. She walked in on us, fully engaged, and just started screaming obscenities. She slapped Steve, scratched him across the face, leaving a massive gash. Then she turned on me, hit me square on the jaw, and pulled out 2 handfuls of my hair before I could scramble for my clothes and get out of that house. That old mama bear was not playing around. When I got home, I was in total shock. The reality of what I had done just slammed into me. I knew my fairy tale marriage to Jim was irrevocably changed, potentially over. I sat silent for hours, just staring at the walls, wondering what I was going to tell him. Finally, I decided to call, leaving an urgent message. I needed to talk to him. He didn't respond. I texted. Nothing. At that point, I just knew. Marcia, or maybe even Steve, had gotten to him first. A few minutes later, Marcia and her mother showed up on our front porch, banging on the door, screaming through the bay window for me to answer. They were yelling obscenities, saying they knew I was in there. I was scared beyond belief, thoroughly embarrassed. Thankfully, my boys were at school. They eventually left, and I just collapsed on the couch, crying. I must have fallen asleep, because I was woken by the sound of a car door. Jim. I splashed water on my face, looked in the mirror, tried to compose myself before going to greet him. But he didn't come in. Instead, I watched through the window as he walked straight down the street, towards Steve and Marcia's house. He stayed there for nearly 3 agonizing hours. When he finally came home, I went to hug him, and he just pushed me away. I started apologizing, pouring my heart out, but he simply said my apology wasn't accepted. He wanted me to leave. Now, I fell to the floor, begging, crying, pleading that I didn't want to go. But he was insistent. You know how in these stories, the woman always ends up on her knees, begging? It feels like some pathetic, standard ploy. He called my mother, told her everything, and asked her to come pick me up. Mom arrived, apologized profusely to Jim, and forcibly convinced me to go back to her house for the night. She helped me pack some clothes. As I left, sobbing, I asked Jim what he was going to tell the kids. He just said he would take care of it. I left brokenhearted and utterly ashamed. That night, from my parents' house, I called Jim. To my surprise, he answered. He just said, "Hello," and then went silent. I told him it was me, how truly sorry I was, that I would spend the rest of my life making it up to him. Jim said nothing. He just asked if I had anything more to say. I said no, and asked him what he was feeling. "You know what I'm feeling," he said, and I started crying again. Then, he told me he wanted me to stay at my parents' house for a couple of weeks before coming home. I reluctantly agreed, but asked when I could see him and the boys again. He said he didn't want to see me, but he would agree to a brief call every evening at 9 p.m. We ended that first call with me saying, "I love you," and Jim saying nothing, just hanging up. What did I expect, right? An "I love you too" after I just cheated? Our call the following night went exactly the same. Me apologizing, Jim silent, until I stopped talking. Then he said it. He wanted a divorce. My heart melted. I begged for another chance, but he flat out refused. He said he knew he'd lose half his hard-earned assets. Then, in the very next breath, he said he'd give me everything he owned if I just disappeared and left him and the boys alone. He was basically saying, "Get this woman out of my life, whatever the cost." I broke down again. "You don't mean that, Jim." But he insisted. Yes, he did. I cried all night. That's when a desperate plan began to form. I started thinking, what could I do to make him stay? I came up with the idea of offering him a post-nuptial agreement so incredibly favorable to him that he couldn't refuse. All I wanted was a second chance, no matter the cost, to prove my love. While Jim was meeting with his divorce attorney, I was meeting with one of my own, not to prepare for divorce, but to craft this lopsided postnup. I went to 4 different attorneys before I found one specializing in postnuptial agreements, willing to create something so skewed in Jim's favor. Jim's attorney was fast. The divorce papers were done in just 11 days. I was served at my parents' house 2 days later. But before I could even process it, I had Jim served with my proposed postnuptial agreement. We talked that night after he read it. For the first time, I could sense the caring person I once knew breaking through that angry, robotic coldness he'd worn for the past 2 weeks. Financially and personally, the agreement was a complete win for Jim. For me, it was an opportunity to prove I was worth keeping. I can't get too specific, but it basically enabled Jim to keep nearly all of our marital assets if we stayed married and living together for at least 30 months. Plus, if I were ever unfaithful again and we divorced, I would lose all claims on our assets. Nothing, no alimony, no child support. It also required me to get a full-time job within 6 months and start contributing a fair share of household expenses. And finally, the clause that truly stung, but I knew I had to include: Jim could see other women if he chose to throughout the remainder of our marriage. I knew Jim would never be unfaithful, it's just not in him. But I wanted him to know I loved him enough to give him this option. To my surprise and absolute delight, Jim accepted. But he had one additional stipulation. And this one was a punch to the gut. He wanted a clause added that stated there was no requirement for us to sleep together or have any type of marital intimacy during the remainder of our marriage. I was heartbroken, so hesitant to agree. But I did. I truly felt that with time, I could win back his respect, his trust, and his passionate love. Things, however, have not gone as I thought. That's why I'm here. We are now 17.5 months into what I call our second marriage, and our relationship is less a marriage and more like 2 housemates raising our boys. Don't get me wrong, I thank God every single day for this second chance. But what we have wouldn't qualify as a marriage. It's like we're 2 divorced people cohabitating. Since my affair, Jim has shown absolutely no affection towards me whatsoever. And I mean nothing. Not even a kiss or a hug. He won't even let me near him to express any affection, though sometimes I manage a quick hug or kiss before he can block me. But I can tell he doesn't like it, so I don't do it often. Even more humiliating, he requires me to submit to monthly at-home STD testing. Even though he won't touch me, he demands I prove I'm clean. Jim refuses to go out in public with me, not even to family events. He's embarrassed, ashamed. When our boys have games, we alternate who takes them. When it's my turn, Jim shows up, but he doesn't sit with me. He stands on the sidelines with other fathers and acts like I'm not even there. The only time we go out together is when we travel, which we do often. When we travel, he orders adjoining rooms with 2 queen beds each, one for the boys, one for us, in separate beds. I look forward to every trip, because these are the times we are closest, where I've almost been able to break through to him. I've even suggested moving from the neighborhood, knowing it could be a fresh start. Jim refuses. He says the only way he'll move is for a job promotion that requires relocation. Otherwise, he plans to stay until our boys graduate high school. And honestly, the boys don't want to move either. All their friends live within half a mile. All of Jim's friends are here too. Since the affair, I've lost all my neighborhood friendships. Steve and Marcia divorced 8 months after D-Day, but Marcia and her kids still live down the street. All the neighborhood women I was once so close to have basically cut me off. They blame me for breaking up a family. As such, my home has become a kind of prison. I never go out front, just stay inside or in my backyard, tending to my gardens. The boys, thankfully, are always out in the neighborhood or have friends over, including Marcia and Steve's kids. Nothing has really changed much in their world. Jim's life is pretty much the same too. He's good friends with all the neighborhood men. They're either at our house smoking cigars and sipping bourbon on the back porch, or he's at one of their homes. Jim basically goes to work, then to the gym, then comes home. He fixes himself something to eat, and then he's off to a game or practice, or socializing with friends. He doesn't eat dinner with us, and he won't eat anything I make anymore, though I did catch him sneaking a few cookies I baked the other day. On weekends, he fires up the grill and only eats what he cooks. None of my dishes. The weekday dinners I have with my boys, though, have become a great bonding experience. They like to eat shortly after getting home from school, so the three of us normally have dinner around 4. I have everything prepared, and they set the table, help me with final food prep, then help clean up afterwards. I cherish this time. It has really brought us closer and taught them valuable skills. They even help me in the garden, where we've created an awesome space in our backyard. So, in summary, some things in my life are really great, while some aspects are just awful. I guess this is just a long way for me to ask. Do you think this marriage is worth continuing as is? Or should I just let Jim go now and give him the financial benefit as if he'd stayed with me? I know deep down he's not happy. How could he be? It's clear he no longer views me as his wife or lover, just as a co-parent. Which, by the way, we are both great at. I love Jim so much, and I will carry the burden of what I did to him for the rest of my life. I want nothing more than to get back to the loving relationship we once had, but I don't think he will ever let us go there. Please, let me know what you think I should do. Any suggestions on how I could successfully earn back the love and trust of my husband after betraying him so brazenly would be deeply appreciated. 8 weeks later, an interim update. I'm back to give you an update. Last month, I took some of your advice and decided to move out of the house for a while to give our marriage some space. I found a short-term rental in a nice, furnished apartment nearby and have been living here ever since. I miss being in the same house as my husband and my boys, and I miss my gardens, but it has also been a relief getting out of that neighborhood. There are just so many terrible memories and bad vibes there. All my fault. I know, I'm not excusing it. When I broke the news to Jim, he seemed surprised and a little sad. He asked a lot of questions. His reaction told me a lot. It told me he still loves me. I saw it in his eyes. I pick up my boys after school, and they come over here to eat dinner and spend the night a few days a week. Jim and I are flexible on that, and the kids know they can come and go as they please at either place. The real issue now is that since I'm out of the house, I don't get to see Jim much at all, nor am I in a position where I get to talk to him. So I end up calling him, asking him stupid questions multiple times a week, just so we can keep in touch. We've had a number of long conversations recently, sessions about everything and nothing at all, which is another indication that the man still loves me. I know I love him. That's all for now. Thanks, and take care. 5 months later. The final update. I've delayed coming back to update you because I wanted to give myself time to provide a complete perspective on my situation. What a journey. Talk about a roller coaster. Life definitely has its ups and downs. First, the downside. 2 years into our second marriage, Jim decided that it would be best for us to divorce. He said that while he still loves me and would like to possibly re-establish a romantic relationship at some point in the future, he just can't do it while we're married. I don't fully understand what he means, but he explained it as something psychological. He said while we're still married, he feels disrespected and betrayed. But after we divorce, he thinks he can let those feelings go. He said it would be like dating again. He even promised me we would go out to celebrate our divorce the day it's final, and possibly spend the night. I know this sounds like a crazy ploy, designed to divorce me without guilt on his part, but I'm up for it. If it means I can keep this man in my life as my partner, lover, and friend, then I'll do it. If we do reconnect, Jim made it clear we will never remarry. He feels if we truly love each other, a binding contract isn't necessary. I agree with that statement, but I do wish there was some way he could do this without divorcing me. As for the divorce itself, I'm voluntarily letting him keep 3/4 of our marital assets, even though he didn't fulfill the stipulations of the postnup. I'm also not going to pursue alimony or child support from him. I know there are women out there who will read this and scold me for being so giving, but I feel he earned the money and would have given all of his fortune to me if I had remained faithful. I am at peace with this decision. Even with a reduced settlement, I'll be able to live comfortably for the next 8 years or more without working. But now I am working, so I'm in even better shape there. Jim built up an incredible nest egg, and I was so stupid to risk it all for some cheap thrill. In closing, I just want to thank those who sent me responses. You don't know how much your words guided my actions and helped me through this trying time. Before I sign off here, I wanted to give some advice to women out there who, like me, have difficulty controlling temptation. My advice to you is simple: resist. Don't do it. The thrill is not worth the risk. It's almost like the juice isn't worth the squeeze, as the saying goes. If you feel you can't keep yourself in check, seek professional help. I can assure you, from painful experience, the short-term high is not worth the long-term loss of love, respect, and trust. My best to all of you. Amy. And that's Amy's story. A devastating, eye-opening journey. What I take from this, what we all should take from this, is a profound, agonizing lesson about the true cost of fleeting desires. Amy made her choices, choices that irrevocably changed her life and the lives of those she loved. And while she's still clinging to a sliver of hope for a future with Jim, the truth is, some things, once broken, can never be fully repaired. Trust, once shattered, leaves scars that redefine the very nature of love. And for Jim, it seems, true healing can only begin when he is finally free.